That first class that we did, for those of you that were here, that is that's our fundamentals class, where we talk about the fundamental building blocks of tarot, a little bit of history, a whole lot of how-to. This second session in the evening tends to be more about a specialty topic. And I put a list out there on the internets so you can see some of the topics we have coming up. Particularly, I'm jazzed up about doing the Halloween tarot on our last class before the big holiday comes upon us. This class is about the practicalities of building a daily tarot practice. If that is daunting to you because you are not the sort of person who can do anything 2 days in a row, again, Gemini here, I totally hear you. It's totally fine. There are benefits to working with the cards, if not every day, often. Obviously, you know, as with any skill, with any instrument, the more you do it, the more facility you will develop with it. And that is certainly true of the tarot cards, because they are many personalities that you're trying to get to know. It's like meeting a whole new family. There's 78 of them. They have relationships you want to learn about. So putting in some time is certainly rewarding. Not everybody has the time to do it every day, but what I do suggest that you do, however much or little time you can put in, get your deck, get your book that you like that is accessible for you, and get some kind of a notebook. Some folks keep beautiful grimoire-style illustrated journals. Some folks, like myself, have very busy, scritchy composition notebooks and journals here. Some people jot things down in the memos of their phone. Whatever it takes for you to have some sort of a record may be useful for you. Why would you want to develop a daily tarot practice? If you're a beginner, it will help you learn the cards. It will help you meet those characters. It will help you understand their relationships and be able to bring them up quickly, the same as a kid memorizing the multiplication tables. It's useful for you to have that information, you know, available at your fingertips. If you're an intermediate tarot person and you've got some time under your belt, you're comfortable with the cards, and it provides an opportunity to deepen those relationships, to deepen your practice and really see the cards in new ways, particularly with some of the exercises I'm going to offer up for you today. And, you know, for folks who have a deep and long-standing relationship with the cards, maybe you're a professional reader, maybe you are a professional priestess, and it's as part of who you are. Even so, working with the cards in this way offers an additional opportunity to plumb the depths of that magical universe that is within you. And at the very least, to laugh along with the universe as the patterns and synchronicities that the cards will bring up give you a little soupçon of humor in your day. So there's something in it for everybody. There are so many different ways to do it. I'm going to present a few different options to you today. Whatever, and you can pick one path and stick with it if you're that kind of person. Or you can look at the variety of options and go on different paths, different days, and different seasons as you figure out what works best for you. Fundamentally, what this is, any day that you're hoping to do it, you want a place to record your information. You want enough space to be, if not uninterrupted, at least only be surrounded by the sort of hubbub that supports you in your meditative journey. Here at Awesome Town, there's a lot of people here. We're doing a lot of things. And often when we're reading our cards, we're in the dining room and there's also other crafting and events and so forth happening. But that's part of the culture here. And mostly it works. If you absolutely need quiet in order to do your thing, maybe you want to do it first thing in the morning when you wake up, or, you know, sneak off and, you know, do it all on an app in the bathroom where you know that you'll be uninterrupted for 15 whole minutes, whatever it takes for you to get it done. But you want to have a way to record what happens. You want to have a deck that you're comfortable with some art that really speaks to you. And again, I want to remind you that it is my belief that representation is really important. So find some deck that shows you the world as you wish it was, or shows you the world as you experience it, something that is relevant to you. Okay, so tarot card today. The most fundamental, let's say the simplest way to do this is every day you find that time, maybe it's on the subway, maybe it's in the bathroom, whatever it is, you take that moment, you've got your deck. In this time, you will develop those fluid habits that will allow you to feel more proficient as a reader. Also, you'll become more comfortable developing your own shuffling style, your own style of laying cards out, your own way of going into a sort of a place of stillness or a meditative condition. Again, there's no right or wrong way to do it. So you'll find your own methodology in this time. It's probably going to look something like find that spot, quiet or not, depending what you need. Take a moment internally to say, hey, cards, or universe, or spirit, or whatever, or deep psyche, however you want to approach it. Hey there, you cards. What do I need to know today? You're going to shuffle, moving through the cards, randomizing the cards according to your own style. Some people like to shuffle cards like they're a card sharp, in Las Vegas. Some people do the Lynchburg Druid and just throw them all in the air and then pick your favorite ones off the floor. I have a much more sort of pedestrian style myself. I'm not dexterous with my hands in a magician sort of way. I just reorder the cards. And as I do it, I think, what do I need to know today? Hey, cards. Hey, universe, what do I need to know today? Then you'll decide how to select that card. Are you going to fan them out on the table? And then, as I usually do, fan them out and then feel with my hand for the tingle that says, I'm your card. Or are you going to, again, throw them in the air, pick one up off the floor? Are you going to say, hey, cards, what do I need to know today? I'm going to pick one off the top or the bottom or the middle. You're going to find your way. And it's doing your cards for 20 days in a row or 30 days in a row or 60 days in a row is a great opportunity to pick a habit, work with it for a while, trade it out for something else. In chaos magic, we say that everything is permissible, right? So you get to explore all of the options and figure out what works for you. Different things at different times. Once you have said, hey, card, what do I need to know? You're going to pick a card. The most fundamental thing you could do, pick a card, you're going to look at it. If you're new to cards, you're going to get your book, which hopefully is more than a little folding book. It needs to be at least this big. Like this is a good substantial starting sort of book. And if you become a tarot fanatic, eventually you'll have a whole shelf full of books like some of us here do. You're going to get that card, you're going to look at it, and you're going to say, looks like a guy with a cup and a duck. I don't know what it's about. And then you're going to read about it. And I would like you to write in your journal, what is the date? What was the question? What was the card you got? What did you learn about it? Here's a piece of advice, pro tip, write at the top of your page the card that you got. Because later on, when you're 20 days in or 60 days in or 180 days in, you're fanning through that journal or that kid's notebook, you're going to wish you could find that information that you've already done in a hurry. So you're going to end up writing those little crib notes for yourself at the top. So, you'll do that one day. You'll get a different card the next day. You'll get a different card the next day. You'll keep going for a while. Eventually, you're going to go, I keep getting the same card over and over. That is part of what the tarot wants to tell you about your own life. It's part of how you learn not only about the cards, because you'll say, hey, this card is familiar to me. I'm pretty sure I already wrote about it. I did. You build the neurons, you build the memories, you start to develop that facility with the card. But it's also going to be like in a world where you could have picked any one of 78 cards in the course of a month. If you got the same card 5 times, perhaps it's relevant to your life experience and you'll learn a little bit of something about yourself. Make a note of it in your journal. So that's like just keeping it kind of, I don't want to say easy. Cards are not necessarily easy, but making it fast. Like I pulled a card, I read a card, I made some notes, I moved on with my day. Totally great. If you want to take that to another level, you can even take that same card, be like, oh, hey, it's that card that I pull when I wake up in the morning. Like leave it there while you brush your teeth. Spend those extra couple minutes looking at it. Like spend some time with the cards before you put it away. But if you want to go to the next level of really digging into those card a day readings, this is my favorite thing that I've been doing with this summer. And this is as a person who already knows something about the cards, this still works pretty well for me. I get my cards. I say, hey, cards, what do I need to know today? Or, what is going to be relevant to my life experience today? Or what do the cards have to teach me today? I write down the date. I write down my mood and affect. Like, You know, is it a full moon? You know, did I have a fight with the kids in the morning? Is it cold and rotten and I'm feeling seasonally disaffected? Like whatever, I'll write something about my mood. Basically, this is a restaurant report for those of you that have ever done that. Like you'll write down all that stuff, you know, is it a holiday weekend, etc. So you're writing down something about the mitigating circumstances. So date, my mood, my affect, and so forth. Because I have a variety of decks, I will also write down what deck I'm using, what book I'm using, because they're going to have there's a wide variety of difference from one source to another. And that's going to help shape your tastes as you figure out what writers really speak to you and what art speaks to you. Write that stuff down. The question I asked, sometimes it will even be really specific. Like you wake up in the morning and go, you know, what do I need to know about this job interview today? Or, you know, what was up with that crazy nightmare I had last night? Like maybe you'll have a simple question, you know, you're going to answer with one card, but it's still something you can jot down. Go through your process, shuffle according to your sensibilities, calming yourself on the inside and keeping focused on this. Try not to multitask and start thinking about other things while you're shuffling. Really give those cards, and by extension, yourself. Really give yourself a moment of your time. Hey, cards, do whatever arrives for you as your personal card pulling protocol. Check that card out. So I think of this as my first, second, third thoughts reading. If anybody who is in class tonight has read any of the Tiffany Aching novels, which are about, they're Terry Pratchett novels about a young woman who grows into witchcraft. They're adorable, cutest books ever. I highly recommend them. They are extremely empowering for women too, and young women. Like they really show young women with a lot of agency. But anyway, she realizes she's a witch when she realizes she has first, second, and third thoughts, by which she means she'll have a thought and then she has a meta thought. She's self-aware enough to think about the thoughts she's having. And that makes her different from a lot of the people around who are just coping with the first thing that comes up. In this practice that I'm going to encourage you to explore, think about those first, second, and third thoughts. What that looks like is you pick the card. Again, either systematically, like you just start at one end of the deck and work your way through, or you ask the question and, you know, get something given to you by the universe. What I do in this case is I write down what the card is and I write down my thoughts, what I think I know about it. Those are my first thoughts. Like, oh yeah, it's the Seeker of Cups. That guy's got commitment issues, super in love with love, a lot of fun, but he's not going to be there when you need him. That's what I think I know about that card at a glance. That's my first thoughts. Second thing that I do is that I then pick up a book, read about it, jot down, you know, make a note of who wrote it, you know, maybe Mary Greer said this, maybe Rachel Pollack said that, and I'll jot down a few notes, like the definition from the books. Then I will reinterpret the cards based on, I sort of synthesize it all together into what I think I know, what sources say, and then I bring that together into a third thought. It's kind of a meta experience of it. And that will allow you to go from just writing down factoids as if you're copying down recipes to really learning how to cook. You're integrating your own interpretation. As you learn more about the cards, you're going to deepen that knowledge that goes into your first thoughts. By the time you get to that third thoughts, it's going to be more and more based on your own experience. Sorry, I'm not sure what's happening here. I am a delicate flower. Now, so that is just being a little bit more scholarly about it, shall we say. Now we're going to get a little bit weirder about it. This is for the person who wants to approach this from more of a lifestyle, self-changing kind of approach. Just a little bit. It's a little bit more woo-woo. This is the hypnagogic approach, which is to say that in that liminal space between sleep and waking, you're going to start to work with the cards a little bit. For me, as a young person, for years when I had a hard time falling asleep at night, instead of counting sheep, I would just imagine that I was in a boat on a river in the moonlight, and that I was going down to the goddess's temple, right? I would sort of see it. And inevitably, I'd fall asleep before I got there because it was all about going down this river. But I would sort of see it come into focus. And I like to think that it sort of helped me to create a better relationship with sleep, knowing that I was going to this cool place. Now, depending on your thing, I mean, it could be, you're on your way to the TARDIS, whatever works for you. In the context of this exercise, what I want you to do, you've picked your card. You could combine it with the other activity if you want. You pick your card, practice good sleep hygiene. So do whatever it is that you need to do, which is actually how doctors describe it. Do whatever you need to do in order to be drowsy, not a lot of screen time at bedtime, have your tea, slow everything down, whatever it takes for you to become a drowsy person on the edge of sleep. Pick up your card. Maybe it's a random card, maybe it's the card from the morning, and look at it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes. You can even set a gentle alarm. Spend some time with it. Look at it. You can even turn it around. You can look at the negative space of it. Spend some time and imagine that you're moving into that card. Spend some time with it, and when you've had enough, you can set it down, shut everything down around you. I like to do something like that by candlelight, because the presence of candles, that kind of warmth, is primordial. It comes from, we recognize it from before we had thoughts and meta thoughts. So spending time with candlelight helps to sort of put us in contact with our the very older parts of our observational brain. And so when you're ready, you can blow your candle out, put your stuff away. Make sure you blow your candle out before you fall asleep. And then as you relax into sleep with your eyes shut, try to continue to envision the card. Maybe you're traveling into the card. Maybe your eyes are just roaming around the card. This is obviously going to be easier for folks who have a strong power of visual recall. But of course, if you do this for a number of days in a row, it's going to help you with your powers of visual recall. Some people will dream about the cards. Some people will just have wacky dreams. Some people won't remember. And some people will go in and out of all of those things. When you're laying there, looking at it in your mind, you can ask questions like, hey, card, what is it you stand for anyway? Just observe. And when you wake up in the morning, if you're capable of good dream journaling hygiene, then jot down some notes. See if any of it comes around for you. And I encourage you to repeat that exercise until helpful. Now, this is my favorite exercise. I'm going to encourage you to share now. Again, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. This I would like to credit my gal Evie over at Interrobang, because I have been training with her, and she is a master of developing deep and interesting ways to see the cards in a new way. So the previous exercises I had, done, intensively over the years. And as I have mentioned in previous sessions, my own tarot teacher from the before times, Kate Nordstrom, who's a great tarot reader and a great intuitive artist, also used to lead me on guided visualizations into the cards. If you have anyone in your life that can help you with that, it's great. Or maybe you can even do it for yourself. Record a guided visualization and move into the card. But it's essentially somebody saying, you see the door, you see the wooden door, you see the plants, twining around the hinges, you see it's all very lush and fertile. You open the door, you move through the door, you keep going until you find yourself in the land of pentacles. You're looking around and observing things. That's a whole other tarot adventure. That's really cool. What Evie suggested to me as a great way to get some of these cards deep in your pattern memory kind of combines all of these things. The guided visualizations that I learned from Kate, the daily card practice, the first, second, third thoughts. What is suggested here, and this presumes that you have some time. I will say, out of 60 days of taroting, that I probably did this on 20 of those days, maybe. That is plenty to get your beak wet, as they say. In this context, you have gone through your process of selection. Maybe it's morning, maybe it's with your coffee or your tea, maybe this is the thing you do when you're settling down at night. You've got your books, you've got your journals, you've got your tarot decks. You go through your personal protocol. Hey, cards, what do I need to know? Pull that card out. You're going to notice, is this one I've seen before? Is this one I already know a bunch about? Is this brand new to me? she would say, go ahead and perform all that other exercise, make sure everything is journaled. But then set a timer. Plan to look at that card. I sat at my dining room table like this for an uncomfortably long amount of time, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. Depends how good you are at sitting still. Set a timer. Really look at that card. You want to note the big picture and then move into the details, because you think you know what's on a tarot card once you've spent some time with it. You could look at cards for a really long time before you realize there's a tiny little snail in the corner. Look at that card, let your eyes move around. They will think that they have taken in all the detail. Your mind becomes restless. You can blur your eyes a little bit. For those of you that have experience with dance, try looking at the card with your peripheral vision. So you're actually using this part of your vision. It will change what you're seeing. Observe the negative space of the card, not the image, but the shape around the image. You can turn that card upside down. It's an old art school trick. Turn the card upside down and see how it is still interesting as it becomes more abstract. Let your mind just explore the image that this artist agonized over making, I have no doubt. As you enter this sort of more abstracted state with the card, does it make you think of any certain memories, any certain smells, any feelings, any emotional conditions? Are you restless? Are you uncomfortable? When the alarm tings, Saved by the Bell, jot all that down in your journal. Give yourself a moment. Reset your timer for the same amount of time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. Do the same exercise, but this time with your eyes shut. What you're asking yourself to do now is summon back to your mind as much as you can about the card. How it made you feel, what it smelled like, what the negative space was like, what the picture is, what the colors were, how many flowers were there, how many dogs were there. Spend that time trying to remember. You just spent 10 minutes looking at it. Hopefully in that time you'll get a sense of what moves for you and what you are able to remember, and the places where, for me, I can say as a person I have a mercurial brain. I take in a lot of information and it moves very fast, and some of it filters out. And so I had to come back and go, I totally did not notice how many stars there were, and so forth. So it gives you an opportunity to sort of learn something about how you also perceive the data the cards are giving you. So as you're seeing it in your mind's eye, you may have to keep bringing it back into focus. Again, feel free to ask it questions like, hey, card, what's up with all the fish? Why so many fish? I never noticed there were so many fish in this card. What's going on with that? Make a note. Listen to your thoughts. Keep trying to bring it back into your mind. Can you reconstruct it? When your alarm tings, you can jot it all down again. At this point, not only have you spent 25 minutes staring at one card and making notes, but you probably have a half a page of notes at least about your experience working with this card. You can, if you have the stamina for it, you can do a couple cards in a day this way, or do a couple cards like one in the morning and one in the evening. Typically for me, I would get to this point and then I needed a rest from the meditative function, as it were, the abstracting function, and would lean back into the written word, which is my comfort zone. So at that point, having written everything down, I would go, yeah, why are there so many fish? And then read exhaustively about what other artists and writers had to say about that particular card and its particular meanings, its particular interpretations. And that sort of thing is how you end up with, page after page of notes on one card that you spent a morning with. Once again, just as we did with those first, second, third thoughts exercise, then you can take everything that you've just done, everything that you've just written, and try to synthesize that into something new that you have learned about that card, that particular one. Again, over time, we have a tendency to see the same cards come up over and over for us, and other cards don't come up at all. So what you may find in the course of a 20-day practice or a 30-day practice or an 80-day practice is that you become very familiar with the finer points in illustration, in interpretation, in negative space, in emotional associations of the cards that are most relevant to your ongoing experience. You know, maybe whatever that is. Maybe you are deep in the throes of trying to navigate your life in a practical sense. So you're continuously getting cards in the Pentacles realm. And so you've learned a lot about those. They're your very familiar neighbors, but you feel that you've never met, the other cards across the hall, as it were, the neighbors that you haven't met. You may find that you have to make a choice at some point and actually separate your deck out and say, these are the ones that I know very well. These are the ones I really need to get to know. In fact, Gordon White, the writer from Rune Soup, is a big tarot fan. And what he would do is he would get his deck and he would go, I know that card. I know that card. I don't know this card. So he's basically breaking the neutral pile down into familiar friends and ones he hadn't met yet. Yep. Nope. Yep. Nope. So once you feel like you have comfortably learned all these guys using this, then perhaps you will start doing your various kind of guided meditations and researches out of this other pile. What you may find, and if I would be very interested to hear what your experience is for those of you that opt to really lean into this practice. You may find that some of the cards that are difficult for you start to come up. It's almost like the universe is giving you a little jab in the ribs. Like, oh, this guy again. It's kind of like working in a coffee shop where you have your favorite customers and then you have the ones that you really don't want to deal with, but you have to because you're there in a service capacity. The tarot can certainly be that, like that. And you're like, oh, why is this guy back? So you will, again, you'll be able to learn information about yourself, some very honest truths about where your consistent challenges lie. An example that I like to give in the course of this tarot card a day or tarot cards for a month or for 3 months, daily practice through the pandemic, whatever you might choose to do. For me as a young person, I got the 5 of Pentacles all the time. If you're familiar with cards, and this is not you're not a novice here, the 5 of Pentacles is a very difficult card. It is a card about feeling that society has failed you, about feeling like you're not seen, you're falling through the net. It is a card of hunger and privation and profound insecurity of resources. Well, at the time, I mean, I was literally a houseless person, in Washington State. I was sleeping in the woods and so forth. And it's like, I know that it's a picture of people like walking in the cold and the snow. I was like, I know, what is this? I started to feel very, not only seen by the cards, but picked on by it. I got to learn that card very well, to the point where, it was comic, but provoking how much I got it, because the cards were saying, duh, this is where you are in your life as a result of your choices. Anytime you'd like this card to go away, perhaps you need to make different choices. I didn't even think about it till many years later. I was like, oh, right, I never get this card anymore. Hey, and instead of feeling picked on by the universe, I actually felt like, oh, I remember you from the before times when I was dumpster diving and so forth. I no longer got that card anymore because I had made different choices and I had different privileges, and my life was no longer one of sort of subsistence. That, for me, that's a personal example. Or as I referred to, I think in the first class, we talk about the Emperor card. Because of my own life experience, the Emperor card was not my favorite card, and it was a very difficult one for me to research and draw. I could draw a picture, but in order to instill that card with any divinatory weight, with any integrity, I had to really dig into my issues as a person, as well as my skill as an artist, in order to find something well-rounded to say about that card. So as you work with the cards, you will get a chance to look at some of your own issues in a different way than just in some tarot reading, just a 3-card spread at a party or whatever. It gives you a chance to do a bit more of a deep dive. And that is where keeping a journal, even if it's just in your phone, date, question, card, how it makes you feel or what it means, those things will really help you see your own issues unfold over time. It's like getting a 2-month tarot reading or a 3-month tarot reading, or, once you've been doing this for a while, the 10-year tarot reading. So if you have any questions about any of those things, again, I invite you to reach out to me and let me know. should anyone who is in this class or watches this class after the fact, if you opt to dive into any of these tarot daily practices, I would love to hear from you about how that is playing out for you. What parts are easy, what parts are hard. For some of us, it's just having the time, giving ourselves permission to have that time. And, maybe due to your work or school or dependence, it's not realistic to do it every single day. But that, there's 3 days a week when the kids are in ballet, or you're waiting to get into your Zoom meeting or whatever, and you have that opportunity. I heard an expression recently that has informed me continuously, which is, it takes all your attention to pay attention, which is really about how we can use intentional thought to shape our lives and our experience, and how we can bring a sense of the magical into our lives every day. This notion of using a card a day tarot practice may be a step for you. That may be a lever for you. So, 8:35. Oh, thank you very much. I think that I am actually at the end of what I need to say about that. So if folks have questions, I would love to hear it. Oh, I do have one more thing to say. Geminis. But I would love to hear any questions if you have them. I have mentioned before also that in addition to reading cards, there's extended technique, right? So you're looking at the card while you're brushing your teeth and so forth. Back in the day, when most folks in Europe were not literate, and yet the churches had a lot to communicate about, we'll say archetypes for the moment, although that word in that sense didn't quite exist yet. Stories needed to be communicated using symbols when people could not read. The iconography of the churches became very clear. You could look up and go, that is clearly St. Francis. That is clearly Santa Lucia holding her eyeballs or whatever. They were clear imagery to help you understand what you were seeing. The Stations of the Cross. It was almost a symbolic shorthand that artists and clerics sort of co-evolved in order to provide access to the spiritual realm to the average person who was not going to be able to read about it, right? So the tarot, in its way, it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. These images, they function largely outside the church, so they have a little bit different curation process, but they're still essentially a group project between the genius of the artists, like the inspiration of the artists, the visions of the patrons and creators, and in the modern era where anybody with the drive has the possibility of making a tarot that reflects their values, they reflect the shifting values of the times. That being said, sorry about my cough there, the art in tarot retains a certain continuity. Again, we see these shifts, the Pope Joan, the Lady Pope, becomes the high priestess or whatever over time. We see these shifts, and yet there's this continuity. It's just like the evolution of, T-Rexes into chickens. We see the continuity. And what that does for you as a person who may or may not know what the cards are about, you can still spend time with them in a non-verbal, non-written way and have profound experiences with them, because there is archetypal energy or, ancient storytelling energy moving through them. You may pick that card up and go, that lady has a lion on a string, or that is clearly represents, the harnessing the power of Leo. Somebody else might pick it up and go, that's totally my kitty. All of those are valid interpretations as far as your tarot reading. They're all layers of interpretation that may be useful for you. So where is this going? Extended technique. So every card has something to say to you, even if you never had a book. You will benefit from learning the history and how your peers and elders have worked with the cards over the ages if you have access to books. But if you just picked up a deck and you're one of those people who's lucky and intuitive, or if you just want to lean into your intuition, pick the card that speaks to you. Pick the card that you love. Pick the card that you hate, the card that sketches you out, that makes you uncomfortable, that makes you feel like the universe is being shitty and calling you out on something that's really sensitive and shameful. find a card that has some emotional content for you and spend time with it. Again, you can put it up in your bathroom mirror. You can, make it your, your screen on your computer, so that every time you're in between things with your meetings for work or for your studio or whatever, it pops up for you. What happens if you spend a lot of time with one of these images is that it gives your deep, intuitive brain a chance to move through the material. In other words, you don't have to sit there and consciously therapize every experience for it to be profound. You can let your deep mind, your primordial magical mind, do some of the heavy lifting. The same as the little old lady in the church, she could just come and sit in front of her favorite stained glass window every day. She didn't have to have somebody come along and explain to her that purple stained glass means this and green stained glass means that, and this is why there's a wheel and this is why there's a flower. She could sit and look at that all the time, her favorite window, and it would be moving, profound psychological content for her in a way that was comforting, perhaps, to the Catholic widow, or comforting, to the nun who had, given her life to the church. There's profundity in just absorbing the images. So you can do that. Again, you can do that in lots of ways. Sky's the limit. We're endlessly creative. But consider, you can also use that sort of passive absorption. And as your relationship with a card shifts and you're like, I don't get all agitated when I see the 5 of Pentacles anymore, make a note of it in your journal. Make a note of what you did. Make a note of how your relationships changed as you have sort of moved through that. And then pick another card that you love or that you hate and spend some time with it and see if you can, again, shift some of your emotional content. That's going to be a tremendous ally for you as a person trying to work with these cards, especially if you're trying to be in service to other people and other querents. The more depth of experience you have with all that is best and worst in the cards, the more relatable other people's experience will be when they sit at your table and beg for help. Okay, I think that was the last thing that I needed to say about that. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. And otherwise, I look forward to seeing everybody back next Monday for class, 5 minutes beforehand, before 7, and 5 minutes before 8. We will be logged in and ready to try to make all this work. If you have questions during this week, you're, of course, as always, welcome to email me at world.spirit.tarot@gmail.com. If you need a deck or you need guidance to decks, obviously I sell my own, but I'm happy to suggest other decks for you. We have a plethora here in the house, so I'm well versed in some of the other decks that are out there. And and we will send you, everyone who is in class will send you this link in a couple days. It usually takes us a few days to deal with the editing and so forth, but we'll make sure that you get this file so that you can prompt your memory as you need to.
Do you want to speak to switching between decks during your daily practice?
Yes, I sure do.
So the question, so everyone can hear it.
Great. Okay. So the question was, what about switching between decks in your daily practice? If you are lucky enough or collectory enough to have more than one deck around, you've got several options there. You can use one deck and pull a card and go, all right, I guess today I'm looking at the Queen of Wands. Pull your Queen of Wands out and pursue any of these tarot a day practice exercises that we've done. You can also pull out that Queen of Wands out of several other decks. Then you have the benefit of comparison and going, oh, I guess there is always some kind of cat, but in this one it's a lion, in this one it's a little black cat, or whatever. You can engage in the spirit of comparison and reading about the different, how the different artists and authors have chosen to express that, what they believe is the fundamental truth of that card. That's really powerful. I built my deck out of years and years of that kind of comparison. I actually had 12 different decks and books that I worked with, and I would sit down and compare them all in order to try to find sort of the center of the Venn diagram, the thing that did not change to suit the fads of the times. So that's really valuable way to do it. And if you get comfortable with the symbolism in more than one deck, it's kind of like learning one language or learning to play zills, learning to play finger symbols. You can learn to play finger symbols standing still, but then you have to relearn in order to do it and walk or dance. So if you're comfortable and fortunate enough to have more than one deck around, then you can, if you get used to switching from one deck to another, or then you can also use them both at the same time in a reading. What that looks like is, and we'll talk about more about reading techniques in the end of this whole season, but that looks like I answered your question with these cards, and then the person says, well, what about the Wheel of Fortune? That card's confusing. You can also choose to answer it with the other deck of cards. So not only does that create some visual interest, and there's a documented history of that with the Lenormand system, which is a whole other kind of cartomancy, but also it may mean that you may get the same card twice. Like if somebody gets the Devil card in 2 different decks in one reading, you know that they've got some unresolved issues that need bringing to light, right? So there's power in using more than one deck, preferably of different varieties, because otherwise you'll spend all your time trying to reconcile decks that are the same and making sure that they end up intact. Does that answer that question? Fantastic. So there's plenty to be said for working with more than one deck at a time. And if that's the case, I encourage you, if you work with what you've got. But if beggars are choosers and you can do what you want, I suggest getting a very traditional deck, such as the Rider-Waite-Smith, which is this style there. It is the most popular deck of this century. And if you have a shower curtain with tarot cards on it, or you got cookies with tarot cards on it and so forth, it's probably this deck. I suggest getting some version of this or something earlier. This one is from around 1900. Get an old-fashioned deck and then get something from maybe the 40s on. And then you have a nice opportunity to see how the art has evolved just in this century. Of course, tarot art goes back many centuries, so you've got a huge span of time to look at. But if you've got a traditional deck and then you've got something a little bit more inclusive and sensitive to the present moment, I think that you are very well situated. Okay, so that ought to do it. I thank you all so much for being here. I want to thank Carmel for being over in the producer's booth, and I hope that this has been useful. It's my first time back in the pontifical saddle here teaching after a few months off, but it's very exciting to share with you, and I hope that it launches some exciting new work for you in the next week, in the next month, and indeed we may need these tools going into the next year. Thanks, y'all, and blessed be.